Something satisfying just happened inside you, and you cannot name it. There is no word for it yet, no category, no diagnosis, no label that captures the full shape of what moved through you these past weeks, these past months, maybe longer. All you know is that you are not the same person who started this year. You are not the same person who sat in that room 6 months ago, nodding along to conversations that drained you. You are not the same person who used to rehearse replies in your head, who used to shrink your voice to fit someone else's comfort, who used to carry tension in your chest like it was yours to hold. Something shifted, and it did not ask your permission. Here is what is strange about it. You did not announce this change. You did not post about it. You did not sit anyone down and explain what was happening. And yet somehow everyone around you already knows. They feel it. They sense it in the way you pause before speaking, in the way your eyes hold steady when they used to dart, in the way you no longer rush to fill silence with nervous laughter or unnecessary apology. They feel it in the space you now occupy differently. Not louder, not more aggressive, but more settled, more anchored, more still. And that stillness is doing something to every room you walk into. People are reacting to you in ways that do not match what you said or did. You are getting long stares from strangers, odd questions from coworkers. Friends who used to call every day are suddenly distant. Family members are making comments that feel pointed but vague, like they are circling something they cannot quite articulate. And if you have been paying attention, really paying attention, you have noticed a pattern. The people closest to you are the most unsettled, not because you hurt them, not because you did anything wrong, but because you stopped being predictable. And in a world that runs on prediction, that is the most disruptive thing a person can do. Let that land for a moment. You did not start a fight. You did not cause a scene. You simply changed the frequency at which you operate. And now every system that was calibrated to your old signal is glitching. Relationships that ran on your overgiving are stalling. Dynamics that depended on your silence are crumbling. Environments that relied on your emotional labor are destabilizing, not because you attacked them, because you withdrew the energy that was holding them together. This is not metaphor. This is physics. This is what happens when a vibrating body in a coupled system changes its resonance. Everything attached to it must either retune or detach. There is no third option. And this is exactly where you are right now. You are standing in the aftermath of an internal earthquake that nobody else saw happen. The ground beneath your identity cracked open. The old version of you, the one who performed, the one who accommodated, the one who dimmed, that version did not die dramatically. It simply stopped being sustainable. Your nervous system could no longer maintain the fiction. Your body could no longer carry the weight of being someone you were not. And so quietly, without ceremony, something in you reorganized. Not your thoughts first, your structure. Your posture shifted before your beliefs did. Your breathing changed before your philosophy did. Your tolerance for nonsense evaporated before you could even articulate why. And that is the part that confuses people because they are looking for an event. They want to point to something and say, that is when it happened. That is why they are different. But there is no event. There is no single moment. There is only the accumulation of 1,000 invisible choices that finally reached critical mass. The morning you did not check your phone first thing. The evening you chose silence over scrolling. The conversation where you said no without explaining. the relationship you stopped resuscitating, the mirror you finally looked into without flinching. None of those moments looked dramatic from the outside, but inside you, each one was a small revolution. Think about what a revolution actually is at its core. It is not an explosion. It is a reorientation, a shift in what the whole system organizes around. Before, you organized around other people's comfort, around their reactions, around the constant low-level question of what do they need from me right now and how quickly can I provide it. That was the gravitational center of your world. And every decision, every relationship, every room you walked into was shaped by that invisible pull. You probably did not even notice it most of the time because it was so constant, so woven into the fabric of your daily experience that it felt like just the way things are. Like gravity, like weather, like something you had no choice but to navigate. But here is what no one tells you about that kind of living. It is exhausting in a way that ordinary rest cannot fix. You could sleep 10 hours and still wake up depleted because the depletion was not coming from your body. It was coming from the continuous low-grade expenditure of energy required to monitor everyone around you, to read the room before you entered it, to calibrate your expression to whatever the moment seemed to demand. That is not living, that is performing. And performance sustained over years does something to a person. It hollows them out from the inside, not all at once, gradually, imperceptibly, until one day you look in the mirror and the face looking back at you is technically yours, but feels like a stranger's. And something in you, something very quiet and very patient, says, enough. Not loudly, not dramatically, just enough. And that whisper, that single syllable from the deepest part of your own intelligence, was the beginning of everything that followed. Here is what no one tells you about transformation. It does not begin with inspiration. It begins with regulation. Before you can think new thoughts, your body has to become a safe place to think them. Before you can hold a new identity, your nervous system has to be able to tolerate the uncertainty of not knowing who you are becoming. Most people skip this. They jump straight to affirmations and vision boards and goal setting, and they wonder why nothing sticks. Nothing sticks because the container is not ready. You cannot pour new wine into a nervous system that is still in survival mode. You cannot build a new life on a foundation of chronic dysregulation. Pause and breathe into that for a moment, because this is where most transformation attempts fail, and most people never understand why. They change their thoughts but not their state. They change their words but not their nervous system. They change their habits, but not the underlying frequency from which those habits are generated. And so the new habits collapse under pressure. The new thoughts dissolve when life gets difficult. The new words ring hollow because the body is still broadcasting the old signal. The container determines what can be held within it. And if the container is still organized around fear, around vigilance, around the constant anticipation of threat, then everything you try to pour into it will eventually take the shape of fear because that is what the container is built for. What happened to you, what is still happening to you, started deeper than mindset. It started in the body, in the way you began to notice your own tension without immediately trying to fix it, in the way you started breathing into discomfort instead of running from it, in the way you allowed yourself to feel the full weight of an emotion without collapsing into it or numbing it away. That is not personal development. That is neurological restructuring. That is your autonomic nervous system shifting from a default state of vigilance to a default state of coherence. And when that shift happens, everything on the surface changes because the surface was always just a reflection of what was happening underneath. Think about what that means. Every relationship you have ever had was shaped by the state of your nervous system. Every decision you made was filtered through whatever mode your body was operating in. Fight, flight, freeze, fawn. If you spent years in a fawn response, you built a life around pleasing others. If you spent years in freeze, you built a life around avoidance. If you spent years in fight, you built a life around control. None of those lives were truly yours. They were survival architectures. Brilliant, adaptive, necessary at the time, but not yours. And now that your system is regulating, those architectures are being dismantled from the inside out. The relationships that were built on your fawning cannot survive your authenticity. The habits that were built on your freezing cannot survive your engagement. The identities that were built on your fighting cannot survive your peace. This is why everything feels like it is falling apart. It is not falling apart. It is falling away. There is a difference. Falling apart implies destruction. Falling away implies revelation. What is being revealed is what was always underneath the performance. And what was always underneath the performance is something so steady, so clear, so quietly powerful, that it makes the old version of you look like a character in a play you no longer remember auditioning for. Imagine a river that has been dammed for years. The water behind the dam is still water. It still had the nature of water. It still wants to flow, to move, to find its level, to carve new paths through new terrain. The dam did not change what the water is. It just held it back. And when the dam breaks, the water does not become something new. It becomes what it always was. That is what is happening inside you. The dam broke, not violently, not catastrophically. It simply became structurally unsustainable. And the water, your true nature, began to move again. And everything that was placed in the riverbed during the years of stillness, everything that settled there, everything that made itself comfortable in the assumption that the water would never move again, is now being displaced, rearranged, carried downstream. That is not destruction. That is the river being a river again. If this is resonating with you right now, if you can feel the truth of these words in your body, take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you do not miss what comes next. I want to pause here and ask you something. What was the moment you first realized you were no longer the same person? Was it a conversation, a silence, a feeling in your body that something had permanently shifted? Share that moment in the comments, because someone else reading it might recognize their own experience in your words. Now here is where it gets interesting. The people around you are not responding to your new thoughts or your new goals or your new habits. They are responding to your new signal. And by signal, I mean something very specific. Every human body emits a bioelectric field. Your heart alone generates an electromagnetic field that extends several feet beyond your skin. This is not esoteric speculation. This is measurable. Instruments can detect it, and that field carries information. It carries the signature of your emotional state, your level of coherence, your internal alignment or misalignment. When you were dysregulated, anxious, people-pleasing, scattered, your field broadcast that, and everyone around you calibrated to it. They knew on a level beneath conscious thought that you were someone who could be pushed, someone who would absorb their discomfort, someone who would bend. Your field said, "I am negotiable." Now your field says something different. It says, "I am here." Not aggressively, not defensively, just factually. I am here. I am not leaving myself. I am not abandoning my center to make you comfortable. And that simple shift, that simple energetic statement is rearranging every dynamic you are part of. Let that sink in for a moment, because the implications are enormous. You did not have to say a single word differently. You did not have to make a single announcement. You did not have to confront anyone or explain anything or post a declaration about your new boundaries and your new values and your new non-negotiables. The field communicated all of it before your mouth ever opened, before you walked through the door, before you even arrived, because fields do not wait for permission to transmit. They broadcast continuously in every direction at every moment. And the people in your life, even the ones who would never use language like this, even the ones who would roll their eyes at the word frequency, they are reading your field in real time. They always have been. They always were. They just used to like what they read. Some people find this magnetic. They are drawn to you in ways they cannot explain. They want to be near you. They feel calmer in your presence. They trust you instinctively, even though nothing external has changed about your credentials or your status. What they are responding to is coherence. A coherent field is like a tuning fork. It does not force anything. It simply offers a frequency, and nearby systems either entrain to it or resist it. And that is the split you are seeing in your life right now. Some people are coming closer. Some people are pulling away. And both movements are correct. Both are the field doing exactly what fields do. Organizing, sorting, clarifying. The ones pulling away are not your enemies. They are simply operating at a frequency that no longer matches yours. And rather than rise to meet you, which would require them to confront their own dysregulation, they create distance. Sometimes that distance looks like silence. Sometimes it looks like criticism. Sometimes it looks like gossip. They will say you changed. They will say you think you are better than everyone. They will say something is off about you. And what they mean, what they are really communicating beneath the language, is that they lost their grip on you. And that loss feels threatening because your predictability was part of their stability. Breathe into that for a moment. You were someone else's emotional infrastructure. Your reactivity was someone else's sense of control. Your over-explaining was someone else's reassurance. Your shrinking was someone else's expansion. And now that you have stopped providing those services, the people who depended on them are experiencing a kind of withdrawal. Not because you did something to them, because you stopped doing something for them that was never yours to do. This is one of the most painful realizations of genuine transformation. You discover that some of the people you loved most did not love you. They loved your function. They loved what you provided. They loved the version of you that was convenient, manageable, and endlessly accommodating. And when that version dissolved, so did their affection. That is not a reflection of your worth. That is a reflection of the terms under which the connection was built. And those terms were never sustainable. They required you to remain small. They required you to keep betraying yourself in micro ways every single day. And your body finally said no. Not your mind. Your body, because the body keeps the score long after the mind has rationalized the situation away. And here is what is important to understand about that discovery. The grief is real. The loss is real. You are allowed to mourn what you thought those relationships were. You are allowed to feel the ache of realizing that the love you received was conditional in ways you did not see at the time. That grief is not weakness. That grief is the appropriate response to a genuine loss. But do not confuse the grief with a reason to go back. Do not mistake the pain of clarity for evidence that the clarity was wrong. Sometimes seeing the truth clearly is the most painful thing a person can do. And the pain does not mean the truth is mistaken. It means the truth matters. It means you cared. It means you were real in a dynamic that was not. And that realness, that authentic investment you brought to connections that could not match it, that is not something to be ashamed of. That is something to honor. Because it tells you that you are capable of genuine love. You simply need to direct it toward people and places that are capable of receiving it. So let us talk about what you actually became. Because the title of this moment is not exaggeration. Something in you is no longer operating by the old human script. And I do not mean that in some fantastical sense. I mean it in the most grounded, practical, neurobiological sense possible. The default human operating system is reactive. Stimulus, response, trigger, reaction, emotion, behavior. That is how most people live. Something happens. They react. Someone says something. They feel something. They do something. The gap between stimulus and response is almost non-existent. What happened in you is that the gap widened. And in that gap, everything changed. You started noticing your reactions before they completed. You started feeling the impulse to defend yourself and choosing not to. You started sensing the pull to over-explain and letting it pass. You started recognizing the urge to seek approval and sitting with the discomfort of not seeking it. That gap, that tiny space between stimulus and response, is the most powerful territory a human being can inhabit. Because in that gap, you are no longer running on programming. You are choosing. And choice, real choice, conscious choice, is so rare in human interaction that when people encounter it, they do not know what to make of it. Think about that. Most conversations are just two nervous systems triggering each other. Two sets of conditioned responses bouncing off each other like billiard balls. Nobody is actually choosing anything. They are just reacting to reactions to reactions. And then you walk in, regulated, present, choosing your words, choosing your silence, choosing your energy, and the whole game breaks down. Because you are not playing. You are not reacting. You are responding. And response, true response, requires a level of presence that most people have never experienced in another person. That is what they are sensing. That is the thing they cannot name. It is not confidence, though it looks like it. It is not arrogance, though it gets mistaken for it. It is not detachment, though it can feel like it to someone who is used to your enmeshment. It is presence. Pure, unmanipulated, non-performative presence. The kind of presence that does not need anything from the room. The kind that does not shift based on who is watching. The kind that remains the same whether you are alone at 3 in the morning or standing in front of 100 people. This is where it gets interesting in a way that most people never consider. Presence, real presence, is not something you perform. It is not something you practice in front of a mirror or cultivate through a technique. It is what remains when you stop performing everything else. It is the signal that emerges when all the noise of self-monitoring, social calculation, and approval-seeking finally quiets down. You did not build presence. You uncovered it. You stopped covering it. And the uncovering happened not because you tried harder, but because you stopped trying in the old way entirely. You stopped trying to manage everyone's experience of you. You stopped trying to be the version of yourself that would be most acceptable to the most people. You stopped trying to predict the reaction and preemptively shape yourself to avoid it. And in that stopping, in that exhale of decades of effortful self-management, what was left was you. Just you, unedited, unperformed, unmanaged. And the world does not know what to do with that. Because the world is not accustomed to it. The world is accustomed to performance. The world knows how to respond to performance because performance is predictable. It follows scripts. It has patterns. It can be mirrored, matched, manipulated. But genuine presence has no script. It cannot be mirrored because it is not a reflection of anything external. It cannot be manipulated because it is not seeking anything that manipulation could promote. It simply is. And that isness, that simple, unadorned, unstrategic being, is the most radical thing a human being can bring into a room. And here is the part that will challenge you. That presence, that new signal, that coherent field, it is going to keep reorganizing your life whether you are ready for it or not. You do not get to keep the new frequency and the old life. They are incompatible. The relationships that cannot hold your new signal will either transform or dissolve. The environments that cannot match your new coherence will become intolerable. The habits, the distractions, the numbing mechanisms you used to rely on, they will stop working. Not because you decided to quit them, but because they no longer fit the organism you have become. This is what real transformation looks like. It is not adding something to your life. It is your life reorganizing around a new center of gravity. And that reorganization is not always comfortable. In fact, it is frequently disorienting. You may find yourself grieving people who are still alive. You may find yourself lonely in rooms full of people. You may find yourself unable to tolerate entertainment that used to comfort you, conversations that used to engage you, goals that used to motivate you. And in those moments, the temptation will be enormous to go back, to soften your boundaries, to laugh at the joke that is not funny, to say yes when your body is screaming no, to perform the old version one more time just to make the discomfort stop. Do not do it. That discomfort is the bridge. It is not a sign that something is wrong. It is a sign that something is working. It is the space between who you were and who you are becoming. And it is supposed to feel unfamiliar. If it felt comfortable, you would not be growing. You would be rearranging furniture in the same room. Real growth means leaving the room entirely. And for a while you stand in the hallway, and the hallway is cold, and the hallway is quiet, and the hallway does not feel like home. But you keep walking, because something in you knows, not believes, knows that the next room is real. Let me speak to the specific texture of that hallway experience, because I want you to hiss some more out when you are in it, so you do not mistake it for failure. The hallway feels like limbo. It feels like you have released the old life, but the new one has not fully arrived. You have let go of the identity that was familiar, but the new one has not yet solidified. You have stopped performing the old patterns, but you have not yet fully inhabited the new ones. And in that in-between space, there is a particular kind of loneliness that is unlike any other loneliness. It is not the loneliness of being without people. It is the loneliness of being without your former self. The self you knew how to be. The self that, however limiting, was at least familiar, at least predictable, at least known. And the mind, in its desperate search for solid ground, will try to convince you that the hallway is the destination, that this discomfort is the proof that you made a mistake. The people who drifted away were the real ones, and the ones who stayed are the anomalies. The mind will build a very convincing case. It will use your own memories as evidence. It will remind you of the good times. It will minimize the cost. It will selectively edit the past until it looks like a paradise you foolishly abandoned. Do not trust that editing. The mind is not trying to deceive you out of malice. It is trying to protect you from the unknown because the unknown is genuinely uncomfortable, and the mind was built to minimize discomfort, not to maximize truth. But you are no longer just a mind. You are a body that has already shifted. You are a nervous system that has already reorganized. And that reorganization is not going to be undone by a convincing thought. The body has already voted. The field has already changed. The new signal is already broadcasting, and no amount of nostalgic mental editing can change what your cells already know. Let me tell you what is happening on a level that most people never discuss. When your internal state changes, when your coherence increases, when your nervous system shifts from survival to sovereignty, you begin to affect the field around you in measurable ways. This is not wishful thinking. Research in biofield science, in heart rate variability studies, in the physics of coupled oscillators all points to the same conclusion. Coherent systems influence less coherent systems in their proximity. Your calm does not just feel good to you, it literally entrains the nervous systems of people near you. Your regulated breathing pattern can shift the breathing pattern of someone sitting across from you without either of you being consciously aware of it. This is why people feel different around you now. This is why strangers are looking at you longer. This is why certain people seem almost hypnotized by your presence, while others seem agitated by it. You are broadcasting a signal that the environment has to respond to, and the response depends entirely on the state of the receiver. Someone who is ready to regulate will feel soothed by your field. Someone who is committed to chaos will feel threatened by it. Both responses are valid data. Both are telling you something about the nature of that connection. And this is where discernment becomes essential, because as your signal strengthens, you will attract two kinds of attention. The first is genuine resonance. People who are on a similar path, who have been doing their own work, who recognize coherence because they are cultivating it themselves. These connections will feel effortless, not because they are without challenge, but because the foundation is mutual growth rather than mutual dependency. You will know these people by how you feel after spending time with them. Not drained, not performing, not calculating, just present. The second kind of attention is extraction. People who are drawn to your energy not because they want to match it, but because they want to consume it. They may not even know they are doing this. They just know that being around you feels good, and they want more of it without doing any of the internal work that generates it. These connections will feel subtly depleting. You will notice yourself dimming slightly in their presence. You will notice yourself overgiving, over-explaining, falling back into old patterns, and the reason is simple. Their system is not trying to entrain with yours. It is trying to feed off yours, and if you do not recognize the difference, you will end up right back where you started, pouring yourself into containers that have no bottom. So pay attention to how you feel, not just what people say. Words are easy to manipulate. Energy is not. Someone can tell you they support your growth, while their nervous system is actively trying to pull you back into reactivity. Someone can say nothing at all, while their presence quietly strengthens your resolve. The body knows. The field knows. Learn to trust that data over the narrative. There is a practice here that is worth naming explicitly. Before you enter any significant interaction, take 3 slow, conscious breaths. Not as a ritual, as a calibration. You are checking in with your own baseline before the interaction begins, so that you have a reference point. Then, during the interaction, notice what happens to your breathing. Notice what happens to your body. Does your chest tighten? Does your jaw clench? Does your breathing become shallow? Does a familiar heaviness settle into your shoulders? Or does your breathing stay open? Does your body remain fluid? Does the interaction feel like it is adding to your energy or drawing from it? These are not subtle signals. Once you are paying attention, they are remarkably clear. The body is an extraordinarily precise instrument for detecting energetic compatibility. You simply have to learn to read it, and the reading begins with the willingness to trust what you feel over what you are told you should feel. Tell me something in the comments. What is one relationship or dynamic in your life that you now see completely differently since this shift began? You do not need to name names. Just describe what you see now that you could not see before. Now let me speak to the part of you that is afraid this will not last, because that part is real, and it deserves to be addressed honestly. You have changed before. You have had moments of clarity before. You have felt this kind of alignment before, maybe briefly, maybe years ago, and then it faded. Life got loud. Old patterns crept back. The people around you pulled you back into the familiar shape, and before you knew it, you were performing again, surviving again, abandoning yourself again. And now a part of you is watching this current shift with suspicion, waiting for it to collapse, waiting for the other shoe to drop, waiting for proof that this too is temporary. Here is what is different this time. And listen carefully, because this distinction matters more than anything else I will say. Previous changes started in your mind. This one started in your body. Previous changes were motivated by pain. This one is sustained by alignment. Previous changes required willpower. This one is running on something deeper than willpower. It is running on recognition. You recognized something about yourself that cannot be unrecognized. You saw something about the way you were living that cannot be unseen, and that seeing, that recognition, did not come from a book or a lecture or a motivational speech. It came from the deepest part of your own intelligence, the part that has been watching, waiting, quietly accumulating evidence for years until the case was so overwhelming that your entire system had no choice but to reorganize around the truth. That is not willpower. That is awakening in the most literal sense. Something that was asleep woke up, and once it is awake, it does not go back to sleep just because the environment is uncomfortable. It stays awake. It stays watching. It stays choosing, and every day that it stays awake, the new neural pathways get stronger. The old ones get weaker, and the distance between who you were and who you are becoming grows wider until crossing back is no longer possible. Not because you cannot, because you would not. Because the old life no longer fits and you know it in your bones. Neuroscience has a name for this. Neuroplasticity, the brain's capacity to rewire itself based on repeated patterns of thought, feeling, and behavior. Every time you choose presence over performance, every time you choose truth over approval, every time you choose the discomfort of authenticity over the comfort of familiar self-abandonment, you are literally building new neural architecture. You are laying down new pathways, new grooves, new default routes for your consciousness to travel. And the more you travel those routes, the more automatic they become, the more natural they feel. The more the old routes, the ones carved by years of people-pleasing and self-betrayal, begin to feel foreign, begin to feel like someone else's roads, because they were. They were built by a version of you that was trying to survive, and you are no longer just surviving, you are building. And what you are building is a nervous system, a life, a field that can hold the full weight of who you actually are. So let me tell you what to do with this, because understanding is not enough. Insight. Insight without integration is just entertainment, and you did not come here to be entertained. You came here because something in you is ready for the next level of embodiment. While what we have explored today touches the surface of how your signal is shifting and reorganizing your world, the complete journey from unconscious transmission to conscious broadcasting, from survival static to sovereign coherence, goes layers upon layers deeper than what a single session can hold. If you are ready to move through the full system, all 9 master frequencies, the step-by-step practices for becoming the broadcast itself, you will find everything mapped out in my book, Beyond the Frequencies, a quantum guide to consciousness mastery. It is linked in the pinned comment below. First, protect the signal. Your new coherence is not invincible. It is strong, but it is still forming. Like wet concrete it needs time to set. And during this setting period, you must be ruthless about what you allow into your field. Not paranoid. Ruthless. There is a difference. Paranoid is fearful and reactive. Ruthless is calm and selective. Reduce your exposure to chaos. This means people, media, environments, conversations. Anything that consistently pulls you out of your center needs to be evaluated honestly. Not with guilt, not with drama, with clarity. Ask yourself, does this interaction leave me more coherent or less coherent? Does this environment support my regulation or undermine it? Does this relationship require me to abandon myself in order to maintain it? If the answer is yes to that last question, you already know what needs to happen. You have known for a while. The only question is whether you will honor what you know. Here is a practical way to think about this. Imagine your coherence as a flame. A newly lit flame is real and genuine and has all the potential of a bonfire, but it is vulnerable to wind in a way that an established fire is not. You would not take a newly lit match and walk it into a storm. You would cup your hands around it. You would find shelter. You would give it time and fuel and oxygen in the right proportions until it became strong enough to withstand the elements. Your new frequency is that flame. Cupping your hands around it is not weakness. It is wisdom. It is the understanding that protection during the formative period is not avoidance. It is cultivation. And cultivation requires discernment about what you expose the growing thing to while it is still becoming. Second, strengthen the container. Your body is the instrument through which this new frequency expresses itself. If the instrument is neglected, the frequency degrades. This is not about aesthetics. This is about capacity. Sleep is non-negotiable, not as a luxury, as architecture. Your nervous system consolidates new patterns during sleep. Deprive it of that, and you are trying to build a cathedral on sand. Movement is non-negotiable, not punishment, not performance. Movement as regulation, walking, stretching, breathing, anything that keeps the body fluid and responsive rather than rigid and reactive. Stillness is non-negotiable, and by stillness, I mean the practice of sitting with yourself without input. No phone, no music, no podcast, just you and the raw experience of being alive in a body. This is where the deepest rewiring happens, in the silence between the stimuli, in the space where there is nothing to react to, and you discover what you actually are when you are not reacting. And when you sit in that stillness, something remarkable begins to happen. The noise of other people's expectations starts to quiet. The static of accumulated social programming starts to thin. And underneath all of it, underneath the years of performance and accommodation and self-editing, you start to hear something, a signal. Faint at first, easy to dismiss, but persistent. A kind of inner knowing that has been there the entire time, speaking in a frequency too quiet to hear above the noise of your former life. That signal is not new. It has always been broadcasting. You simply could not receive it when your system was too saturated with external input. Stillness is not emptiness. Stillness is the condition under which you become capable of receiving the most important transmission of your life, the one that has been waiting patiently for you to finally get quiet enough to hear it. Third, let the reorganization happen. Stop trying to control the timing. Stop trying to manage other people's responses to your change. Stop trying to make the transition comfortable for everyone. It will not be comfortable. Growth is not comfortable. Birth is not comfortable. But it is necessary. And the more you resist the reorganization, the more painful it becomes. Let the friendships that need to shift, shift. Let the conversations that need to end, end. Let the identity that needs to die, die. You are not losing yourself. You are finding yourself, and the finding requires the releasing. They are not separate processes. They are the same process viewed from different angles. There is a particular kind of courage required to let things end without trying to rescue them. The courage to sit with the discomfort of an incomplete story. The courage to allow a chapter to close without knowing what the next one holds. Most people cannot do this. Most people rush to fill the space left by what is ending with something, anything that restores the feeling of continuity. A new relationship to replace the old one. A new habit to fill the time of the abandoned one. A new identity to step into before the old one has fully dissolved. And in that rushing, they skip the most important part. The part where you are nothing in particular. The part where you are between stories. The part where you are genuinely, uncomfortably, productively empty. That emptiness is not a problem to be solved. It is a field to be inhabited. It is the fallow ground between harvests. It is the silence between notes that makes the music possible. If you rush through it, if you fill it before it has done its work, you carry the unprocessed residue of the old life into the new one. And then you wonder why the new life feels like the old one in a different costume. Stay in the emptiness long enough to let it complete its work. It knows what it is doing. You do not have to. Fourth, stop explaining yourself. This is perhaps the most important practice of all. The old you explained everything, justified every boundary, defended every choice, apologized for every change. That was the fawn response talking. That was the part of you that believed your right to exist was conditional on other people's approval. That part served you once. It kept you safe in environments where being yourself was dangerous. But you are not in that environment anymore. Or if you are building the capacity to leave it. Either way, the explaining must stop. Not because communication is bad, but because over-explanation is a form of self-abandonment. Every time you rush to justify your growth, you are implicitly agreeing that your growth requires justification. It does not. You do not owe anyone a dissertation on why you are becoming healthier, clearer, more boundaried, more alive. You simply become it, and you let your consistency speak louder than any explanation ever could. Notice how different that feels in your body, the difference between the impulse to explain and the choice to simply be. The explaining comes with a particular kind of tension, a bracing, a preemptive apology, a tightening in the chest that says, I need you to understand me before I can feel safe. The being comes with something else entirely. A settledness, a quiet, a willingness to be misunderstood in the short term because you trust that your consistency will communicate what your words never could. That trust is not arrogance. It is the deepest kind of self-respect. It is the recognition that your life, lived fully and authentically, is its own argument, and it does not need your anxious narration to make its case. Fifth, trust the intelligence that initiated this. Whatever woke up in you, whatever force or recognition or deep knowing set this transformation in motion, it is not done. It is not a one-time event. It is an ongoing process, and it knows what it is doing even when you do not. There will be days when you feel lost, days when the old patterns call to you with a sweetness that almost sounds like home, days when you question everything and wonder if you made a mistake. On those days, do not make decisions. Do not reach for the old life. Do not send the text. Do not accept the invitation. Just be still. Let the wave pass because it will pass. And on the other side of it, you will find yourself exactly where you need to be, 1 degree more aligned than you were before. The intelligence that initiated this transformation is not separate from you. It is not some external force that descended upon you and rearranged your life without your participation. It is the deepest part of you, the part that was never fooled, the part that always knew the performance was a performance, the part that watched you shrink and smiled patiently and waited with infinite patience for you to remember that you did not have to. That intelligence does not abandon you on the difficult days. It is most present on the difficult days because the difficult days are the ones where the choice matters most, where the practice is most real, where the commitment to yourself is tested in the only way that commitment can be tested, by the presence of genuine temptation. And every time you choose alignment on those days, every time you feel the pull of the old life and choose the new one anyway, you are not just making a decision. You are casting a vote for who you are, and those votes accumulate. They become a majority. They become a landslide. They become a life. There is something else happening that I want you to understand, because it will save you from a tremendous amount of confusion. As your frequency shifts, your perception shifts with it. You begin to see things you could not see before, not because those things are new, but because your filters changed. You start noticing manipulation that you previously normalized. You start recognizing dynamics that you previously accepted as just the way things are. You start feeling the difference between genuine connection and performance, between authentic kindness and strategic niceness, between real support and conditional approval. This can be deeply unsettling because it means reevaluating not just your present, but your past. Memories that once seemed neutral suddenly reveal layers of dysfunction you could not perceive at the time. Relationships you thought were loving suddenly look like carefully maintained systems of control. Choices you thought were free suddenly appear to have been made under duress you did not recognize. And the temptation in this reevaluation is to become bitter, to feel foolish, to be angry at yourself for not seeing it sooner. Resist that temptation. You could not have seen it sooner because you were not yet the person who could see it. Perception is a function of state. A dysregulated nervous system literally cannot perceive certain truths because perceiving them would be destabilizing. And the system's primary job is to maintain stability, even false stability, even stability that comes at the cost of your authenticity, your joy, your life force. You were not blind. You were protected. And now that your system is strong enough to handle the truth is emerging. That is not failure. That is the deepest kind of success. That is your own intelligence trusting you enough to show you what is real. And there is something almost sacred in that. The fact that your own system protected you from what you were not yet ready to see. The fact that the truth waited. The fact that the revelation was timed to your capacity to receive it without being destroyed by it. That is not random. That is the intelligence of the organism doing exactly what it is designed to do, protecting you until you are strong enough to be free. And now you are strong enough. Now the protection is no longer necessary. Now the truth can come, and it is coming. Not all at once. Layer by layer, gently but completely. And each layer that comes, each piece of the picture that becomes clear, is another degree of freedom, another weight lifted, another room in your own house that you are finally allowed to enter. So here you are, standing in a life that is rearranging itself around someone you are still learning to be, surrounded by reactions you did not invite, holding a frequency you did not plan, feeling a steadiness that surprises even you. And the question is not whether this is real. You already know it is real. The question is whether you will stay. Whether you will stay when it is uncomfortable. Whether you will stay when the old world calls you back, with voices that sound like love but feel like cages. Whether you will stay when the loneliness of the hallway makes you forget that the next room exists. Whether you will stay when your own mind, trained by decades of self-abandonment, tries to convince you that this new version of you is the imposter and the old one was the real thing. It was not. The old one was the costume. This, what you are feeling right now, this quiet, grounded, unshakable something that has taken root in your center. This is what was always underneath. This is what you were before the world told you it was not enough. This is what you are after you stopped believing them. And the people who can feel it, the ones whose eyes widen slightly when you walk in, the ones who pause mid-sentence when you speak, the ones who cannot explain why they trust you, but they do. They are not responding to something you built. They are responding to something you uncovered, something that was always there, something that just needed you to stop hiding it. You are not who you were, and you are not yet fully who you are becoming. But you are in the most sacred part of the journey, the part where the old world has lost its grip and the new world hasn't yet fully formed. The part where you are held by nothing but your own willingness to keep going. The part where faith is not a belief, but a practice. Something you do with your body every morning when you choose alignment over comfort, truth over approval, presence over performance. And I want to say something to you that you may not have heard in a long time, or perhaps ever, in a way that landed. What you are doing is extraordinary, not because it looks dramatic from the outside, because it does not. It looks quiet. It looks like you just stopped being as available. It looks like you got a little distant. It looks, to the people who cannot see beneath the surface, like you changed in some vague, slightly concerning way that they cannot quite name. But from the inside, from where you are standing, you know what it actually is. It is the bravest thing a human being can do. Choosing yourself, not in a selfish way, not in a way that dismisses others or elevates yourself above them, but in the foundational way. The way that says, I will not continue to betray the deepest part of myself in order to maintain a version of connection that requires my diminishment. That is not selfishness. That is the prerequisite for genuine love. Because you cannot love authentically from a place of self-abandonment. You can only perform love, and the world has enough performance. What it needs, what the people in your life actually need, even if they do not know it yet, is your real presence. And your real presence only becomes available when you stop performing. Consider listening to this again tomorrow morning before the world gets loud, and let these words settle deeper into your nervous system each time. Or share this with someone who is in the middle of their own shift right now. Because when you pass this frequency forward, you reinforce it in yourself. You create a resonance between two systems that amplifies the coherence in both, and that ripple does not stop with the two of you. It moves outward into every interaction, every room, every field you both walk into. Stay here. Not because it is easy, because it is real. And if you have felt this, if something in these words landed not in your mind, but in your chest, in your belly, in that place beneath thought where knowing lives, then you already have your confirmation. You do not need anyone else to validate what is happening inside you. The shift is real. The frequency is yours, and the world is already responding to it, whether anyone admits it or not. So let them whisper, let them wonder, let them project their confusion onto your clarity. It does not change what you became. It does not slow what is moving through you. It does not diminish the signal that is now broadcasting from every cell of your body. You are not performing transformation. You are not mimicking growth. You are not rehearsing a better version of yourself. You crossed a line that does not allow return, and the crossing happened so quietly that even you almost missed it. But your body did not miss it. Your field did not miss it. And every person who comes within range of your presence, they do not miss it either. This is not the end of anything. This is the beginning of what happens when a human being stops abandoning themselves and starts living from the center of their own coherence. And what happens next? What builds from here? What becomes possible when you maintain this signal long enough for reality to fully reorganize around it? That is beyond what your current mind can project. Because the mind projects from the past, and you are no longer operating from the past. You are operating from a place that has no precedent in your personal history. A place that is being built in real time, breath by breath, choice by choice, moment by moment. Trust it. Not because someone told you to, because your body already does, because your nervous system already shifted, because the old world already noticed, because you already know in the deepest, quietest, most unshakable part of yourself that what you became is not going away. And that knowing, that wordless, bone-deep, cellular knowing, is the only confirmation you will ever need. If something in this resonated with you, if you felt it move through you rather than just past you, leave a word in the comments. Just one word that captures what this moment feels like for you. And share this with someone who is in the hallway right now. Someone who needs to hear that the discomfort they are feeling is not a sign of failure. It is a sign of becoming. You already know what you are. Now let the world catch up. And if you are ready to understand exactly how your nervous system is driving this entire transformation, go watch your timeline is shifting right now and your nervous system already knows. It will show you the deeper mechanics behind what your body has already started doing and how to work with it consciously from this point forward.